As you can see, my talk is about how social media is used by citizens and also politicians to campaign. And when I was asked to give a talk on a lecture series about the age of Trump, my first question, or my first thought was, what is the age of Trump? My second thought was, the age of Trump is 71. My third thought was, that's not funny. And my fourth thought is that now we're in the age of Trump. And what times are we talking about that we live in? We're talking about a time of low trust, in approval for governments, increasing hostility towards the political elites. Those of you who were here for my lecture last year heard me talk about populism. And this is something that's both in the EU and the US. So in the EU, you have a decline in the standing of traditional parties, right? So your center-left and your center-right parties give way to extreme parties on the left and right. But also in the US, which only has two parties, you have splits within those parties. So in the Republican Party right now, there's a split between the Donald Trump Bannon wing, as it's called, and the more conservative Republicans, the more mainstream, the Paul Ryans and the Newt Gingriches that we're all familiar with, at least in the States. And on the Democratic side, you have an establishment wing that in this past election was led by Hillary Clinton, with a more insurgent left wing from Bernie Sanders, right? So the party system is changing, but also our media diet is changing. We consume more, or we have the options to consume more media than ever before. We can live stream, we can, read the newspaper, we can read the newspaper online, and we can get news from social media and different social media. So there's all different ways that we can consume media, making for a more diverse setting. There's a divide between generations and how they use social media. I see we have both some older and some younger attendants here, and I'll go into that in a bit. And we also have polarization is on the rise, a buzzword that we hear a lot about. And what polarization is, basically, is not willing to hear the other side of an argument politically. And even more so, being almost having a hatred towards someone who has a different political opinion or a different set of ideological values. So, starting out here, I'm just going to throw some graphs at you so you can get a sort of quantify a little bit what I'm saying. Trust in EU institutions on the decline. This is 2002 to 2015. This is from EURECO data that has been plotted by some social scientists. What we see, low decline in trust in how EU institutions function, but there's an interesting split between those hit by the financial crisis, Greece, Ireland, Spain, and Portugal, and Northern European countries. So in Europe, when we talk about polarization, it's generally between North and South Europe. Now, looking at the US, to compare, 2002 starts here, and it goes down, but this is trust in the US legislative branch. That's Congress and the Senate. In 2002, trust was about 67%, down to 31%. And it's about the same here, around 70%, and down to about 30. And in Northern Europe, 50, 55, something like that. So trust on the decline. Now, in terms of mainstream parties, and across Europe, so across different national governments, center parties have been in decline. And you see this, the far right creeping up here, and this development's been going on for some time. The far left took a little bit of a dive in the 90s, but point of this graph, center parties, their representation in national governments, declining. Online social network use across the EU. You'll see about, this is the split between those who use social media and those who don't. Roughly about half of most populations across Europe use social media. Now this is from 2014, it's probably gone up since then. But what you have is a divide between those who access social media once a week is over 91%. 55 and over, 14%. So that's that generational divide I was talking about. And everyone knows social media is generally for younger people, right? But that trend is also starting to change. Older people are getting on Facebook. Polarization. This is some data. This is pretty funny. This is a survey question that was asked how upset would you be if your son or daughter married someone from the other party? In 1960, Democrats and Republicans didn't care. About 5% cared whether their son or daughter married someone from the other party. Now it's shot up to about 20% and 25%, with Republicans not liking if their son or daughter dates or marries a Democrat. So that's a real kind of hard-hitting signal of polarization in America. And this is from 2008. I don't want to know what it's like now, right? It's been 10 years since, and it's probably not going lower. So that was just some kind of background on the age of Trump. I don't know how much the other speakers will address that, but for this particular lecture, we're going to look at some classic theories of political participation. What does it mean, and how is it changing? Considering the digital communication revolution that social media has brought, I think all of us are on, or most of us are on social media daily, and that's new. We're also going to look at how politicians and citizens use social media to campaign for their political cause. Think about how the technological design of different social media might influence the ways that those actors campaign. And lastly, we're going to try to identify some digital transatlantic trends in the EU and US. What can we, in these different contexts, what can we identify as similar between them? So, the kind of classic definition of political participation is, there's many, but the one that most political scientists use is the one by Sidney Verba and Norman Nye. Anyone who's studying here at the department should know these names. And the definition was the activities of private citizens that are aimed at influencing government personnel or the actions of government personnel. And they wrote in this book back in the 70s that they're going to take a very narrow definition. Political participation has to be in the context of an election, and you have to be doing something. You have to be spending time, spending money, or spending energy in order for that to count as participation in the political process. Say Verba and Nye. What they excluded was protests, boycotts, and discussions about politics. So this doesn't really affect the political process, at least not legally. So their definition was very narrow. The question is, does this count as political participation? Does anyone know who this is? No one's seen Napoleon Dynamite in Europe. Okay. So this would not count in their definition because this is not spending time, energy, or money in the sense of a formal election, right? So what some colleagues and I have been doing is trying to think, well, we know that citizens can influence each other, talk to each other about politics in ways that can lead to political change. So instead of looking at political participation as an activity, we look at it as a process. And how we conceptualize it is that, like, you're not just going to be completely unengaged in politics and then go vote. It just doesn't work that way. You generally read or get interested in some political issue, you discuss it among your friends or what have you, and then you get mobilized. There's some event, let's say the government wants to raise student fees or cut SU or something like that. If there's a protest and your friend says, hey, let's go, and you say why, because they're going to take your SU away, this is a call to action that might get you involved to do something such as protesting or going out or even running for office. So it's a gradual process, not just an activity that you do. That's our argument. So where social media fits in and where online news fits in is that when you see something on Facebook or you read something in online news, this can act as a gateway to participation. It can be a first step to doing something else. And also, social media can amplify the reach of news. So if there's this protest going on about student fees, everyone can share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and make more people aware. More people will show up to the protest. It might get covered in the mainstream media. So social media is both a gateway and an amplifier of political news. I think everyone remembers this picture, right? Of the drowned Syrian boy, Alan Kurdi. So this was released on the cover of mainstream media, The Independent, in September 3rd, 2015. In the first 2 hours, it had less than 500 shares on Twitter. These are mostly journalists. I know not a lot of Danish people use Twitter. Who cares about Twitter? But this is where it starts. Same thing with the Arab Spring. It starts as a seed on Twitter, and then it explodes. In the first 12 hours, 20 million impressions on social media. Now that's a significant number. This is all different platforms, not just Twitter. So what? Some scholars have looked at data, and searches for migrants versus refugees. Migrants are in blue. The photo is right about here. Boom. The change in discourse was before the refugee crisis, it was the migrant crisis. This photo and the amplification of its message on social media arguably changed the discourse about how we frame and discuss refugees. From migrants to refugees. Because of this photo. That's one argument that comes out of the social media data. Now, of course, there are factors. It's been published in mainstream media as well. Like Angela Merkel had to sort of address it. But I think I like this picture because it really, people weren't even really talking about migrants or refugees until September 2015. So then people go to Google when they see, like I said, this gateway. People see things across their different social media feeds and they start Googling stuff. And we have that, or Google has most of that data, but we can access some of it, right? So what were the top questions about migration in the United States after this photo went viral? Why are people migrating to Europe? What is the European migration crisis? Why are Syrians migrating to Europe? What is happening in Syria? Where are migrants coming from? This reminds you of the, what is the EU question after Brexit, right? The amplification of that photo drives interest for people to search about more information. So let's look at Germany and how it might manifest into political participation the way Verba and I thought about it. Where are the refugees coming from? How to volunteer to help migrants? How can I take some action? Why do migrants go to the UK? When is a refugee really a migrant? What will happen in Europe after the migrant crisis? In Italy, how to adopt a Syrian orphan child. That's interesting. How many migrants are there in Italy? How to take a migrant from Greece to Germany. Now that's really getting involved, right? Will Germany accept migrants who have given fingerprints? And something about the Pope. So you can see how that photo, we can actually see what people are thinking by what they type into Google. This is why Google is so powerful, and this is why Google is so rich. Because it knows what we think. Especially after events. So I'm kind of getting ahead of the curve here, but politicians, one of their key tactics in modern day campaigning is to monitor people's Google searches. Because they want to know when something happens, what do people type? Because what they type into Google gives an insight into their brain. And they can adjust their messages and monitor the effect on Google searches. So there's a spillover process where people are exposed to news, perhaps on social media. Some people only get their information from social media. Whether it's shared by a friend, pops up in your newsfeed because whoever shared it, or someone you don't even know shares something that by algorithms gets into your newsfeed. Once you're exposed, you might go to Google and search for information. Why is the government raising student fees? Then you get informed, and many, many studies show that people who are informed about politics are more likely to take action about politics. They're more likely to participate in the political process. So the argument is not that social media changes everything in politics, but it does perhaps get some people involved. And politicians know this. They know this very well. And they can harness what citizens share, or what they do on social media, for their own purposes. So there's a really interesting study recently by a guy named Joel Penny, who has this concept of the citizen marketer, that politicians use citizens to market their message and spread it across their networks, and those logics that they follow are viral marketing. So we've all heard of things going viral on Facebook. How do things go viral? Everyone shares them. So politicians tried to get citizens to work together to share their message. They can engage with political content in various ways. The citizens can. They can create content. You can post something on Facebook. You can post a video on Instagram. You can show support by liking something, or you can now use reactions, and you can show surprise or loving something or being angry at something. You can comment, so you can respond and put your own 2 cents in on what's going on a political debate. You can also share something, right? And all of these influence different factors in algorithms. So we don't know exactly how much your comment will make a post go farther across different algorithms. There's hundreds of thousands of data points on each individual that determine those calculations. But I think it's safe to say that sharing, if you want to get the word out, sharing is the most powerful tool to do that, because if you share across your network and someone else shares across their network, it can be seen by 2 people who don't even know each other. So sharing is the way to really make content travel over social media. This is a project I've been working on about the US presidential campaign. Here you have all the candidates. There's a lot of them this time around, which is not fun when you're processing data, but this is from July 2015, so over a year before the campaign and about 6 months before the primaries really took off. So really early in the campaigning cycle. And this is how many shares each candidate got. This little black line is the median. So not the average, but I don't know how many of you are political scientists. It's more or less the average number of shares they got. What we see is that Trump is way ahead. Ben Carson, I think I have some indicators here. So the top Republican and the top Democrat, interestingly, was Bernie Sanders, not Hillary Clinton. And then, you have all these other, even popular politicians like Jeb Bush, just getting no shares on Facebook, nothing. So this is over a year before the campaign, and the difference between Sanders and Trump is about 4,500 shares on average. Then we go to the heart of primary campaigning, Super Tuesday, South Carolina, early primary campaigning states. I took a lot of those politicians out because they didn't have any shares. But look at what happens. Trump and Sanders narrow the gap to about 400 shares in each post. That's closing 4,000 shares on average. It's pretty good. How did Bernie Sanders do that? Does anyone have any idea? Could have paid. What's that? Yes. They had a lot of Facebook groups that were mobilized. One was called People for Bernie Sanders. That was a hybrid between the official campaign and some organizers. There was also the Bernie Sanders dank meme stash, which was completely by citizens, and the campaign knew about it and monitored it, but didn't interfere with what was going on the dank meme stash. But there's another very telling reason for how Bernie Sanders was able to get so many shares. The Connect with Bernie official social media organizing app. What does that do? I didn't know about this after the election, but it's brilliant. What it does is it has all sorts of functions in terms of promoting when events are and telling you to tell your friends about what Bernie's doing. But what it really did was when Bernie Sanders would post something, everyone who had the app got an alert on their phone saying like, share, comment now. And what that did is it amplified Bernie Sanders' message across social media much more than even paying to promote would do. I pay to promote things all the time and I don't get much engagement. So it's, there's different levels of sophistication there with the campaign, but this tool was incredibly powerful. And interestingly, I heard an interview with Bernie Sanders' digital director, and what he was saying is that Bernie Sanders isn't really a cool guy. He's just not. He's not as cool as the image makes him out to be, but through social media and his loyal younger fans and promoting different memes, Bernie Sanders became a cool candidate, and apparently he's just an old guy. The Bernie Sanders Connect with Bernie app was promoted across different social media channels to alert users to sign up for it. And here we see, this is about a similar time period to when I had, about a week in February 2016. What are the top hashtags? Feel the burn. Doubling Cruise Crew, and I'm with her, and Make America Great Again. So Bernie was able to harness social media following the same way Obama did in 2012 and 2008. But he didn't get the nomination, so we can't necessarily say more hashtag shares equals electoral success. But some interesting ways that politicians use different digital tools. But politicians use social media in many other ways. Especially in America, they use it for fundraising. But looking at the data, not many people share posts that ask for money. No one wants to like that, because no one wants to give money. But the way Facebook is used is to drive people to give their email address. 70% of all contributions for a campaign from online advertising come from email drives. So the point is, get your email through Facebook or through a digital app, and then ask people for money in their inbox. And the way that works is they already know what you'll give money for. Your data's already out there. So they know that you are for whatever, going back to the States here, but you're pro-Planned Parenthood and your issue is contraception. You want contraception free for every woman in America. They know that based on what you've done on Facebook, what you've searched on Google. They buy that data. They have your credit card information. They have your utility bills. And they know that's the number one issue you care about. So what you're going to get in your email is about free contraception that Bernie Sanders is offering. Whereas someone else who doesn't care about that will get a different email. And that's how they fundraise. So social media is a way to collect more data about you. It can also be used to promote policy issues through micro-targeting. And I'm not going to go too much into micro-targeting here, but I'm happy to do that in the Q&A. Twitter primarily is used to influence the media agenda. How is this done? Well, mostly it's journalists and academics on Twitter. But what a campaign can do is release a statement or a new advertisement and tag every journalist that it wants to hit. So the person writing for Politiken gets a direct message from a campaign saying, hey, check out our new ad. Please write about it. And then that way, campaigns can get ahead of journalists and influence what they write in the mass media. They also collect all sorts of different data, mostly from Google ad searches, not necessarily from social media. And they control their image. So this is my personal favorite candidate on social media, hate his policies, but Scott Walker is a governor from Wisconsin. And so this is him taking a Snapchat before a presidential debate. And I'm going to show you that Snapchat in a second. But what's funny is I was just filling around with this last night, and I pulled up the top comments. Walker standing alongside all his supporters was the top comment. And there's no one here, which is so funny. Troll. Scott Walker, you're going to vote for Trump? So this is kind of a liability for campaigns, right? They put their content out there, but there's a lot of trolls. A lot of trolls. And especially, how do you get to the top comments? You get the most likes. And if you have a bunch of people with an app in their pocket that says, hey, go on over to Hillary's page and like a bunch of troll comments, and everyone does that, then it influences what people see. And perhaps their potential to spill over and participate. So I'll go ahead and just show you. I know maybe not everyone is on Snapchat here, but that's the snap. You can see it's the same background. To give you an idea, this is, I know this looks archaic by now, but this is how Snapchat looked in 2015. What I was doing is I downloaded basically an Android platform on my computer and then used a screen capturing software to harvest all the Snapchats. And that was fun. But the different features you have is you have the live stories. So these would be put on with different events. Here you see New York Fashion Week, but it could also be around different locations. So I can't even read what that one is. I think it's Iceland. So they had a story from user-generated content from Iceland. And then you had all the different candidates here. And I'll just go ahead and play this story so you can get an idea. The audio isn't so good, but it just goes through my computer. Anyways, it's talking about the campaign. These are some kind of behind-the-scenes snaps from and a lot of media stuff. So there's an element of being able to control your image on social media. That's what I wanted to do. I think Scott Walker did that in a very positive way by talking directly to people via Snapchat. Like a lot of the Snapchats were people just showing pans of the crowd and interacting with supporters. And interestingly, not one politician actually took Snapchats themselves. And the majority of people who use Snapchat use it to broadcast what they're doing. And no politician did that, so they completely missed the point of the platform. Obviously they're busy, but yeah, bad Snapchatters altogether. So what politicians can also do is they can use social media to go around what the media says about them. And now they even attack the media. So you might be familiar with this meme. This is from WrestleMania. And someone, interestingly, a citizen in the United States, put that little meme together with CNN on a Reddit forum, and Trump retweeted it. So Trump didn't make this himself, he got it from some guy. And this caused a huge media storm, maybe you remember. Let's see if this works. This is why the audio's not working. 1 second, guys. So this is an example of how politicians can go around the media, but also attack the media. Do we have to turn this up, maybe? Anyways, we can come back to it. No, there's some good Trump stuff coming up. We should introduce him first, I think. Let's see if that... Are there any questions so far? No?
I do have a question.
Yeah?
And I guess you might be coming to this later. You mentioned the whole harvesting of credit card and utility bills information and how that's used to parallel with the data harvesting from Google. Do you know to what extent that occurs in Europe?
Yes. Okay. I'll talk about micro-targeting. I'm coming to that, and then I'll get to the European question. It's tough. The short answer is that it's more strict in Europe than it is in the US, and it also differs between countries. So countries like Germany and France have very, very strict data privacy laws, whereas others just simply don't. So that's the big battle, apropos the lecture they were talking about with EU regulators and what are they going to do about it. Okay, let's see if this, it could be my computer. Yeah, no worries. No.
Michael?
Yeah?
Try to put your own mic to the
Hey.
speakers of the computer.
Hey, that's using your brain.
Like CNN does not want its falling viewership to watch what I'm saying tonight. I mean, the advantage I have is that we do have a big voice. And you know, they're always saying like Twitter or social media. If I didn't have social media, I wouldn't be able to get the word out. I probably wouldn't be standing here, right? I probably wouldn't be standing here. If I don't have social media, I probably would not be standing. And do you ever notice when I go on and I'll put like out a tweet or a couple of tweets, he's in a Twitter storm again. I don't do Twitter storms. You know, you put on a little tweet, I'm going.
I don't do Twitter storms. That's why we have scientists to prove there are Twitter storms. This is brilliant. What some guys did, I believe it was at the LSE, they downloaded about 1,400 of Trump's tweets from his account. And when you download tweets, you get a whole spreadsheet of data. And one of the points of data that you get is whether the phone was sent from what operating system. Was it an iPhone or an Android? And what these guys were basically able to find is that Trump tweets from his Android. He has a Samsung Galaxy. We don't know which model, but he has a Samsung Galaxy, whereas his campaign tweeted from an iPhone. So we can look with pretty good accuracy. The red line is Trump tweets from the iPhone, and the blue line is tweets from the campaign, and this is the hour of the day. So we can see when Trump's Twitter storms are happening. If you look, this is 5 o'clock. This is basically when people are off work. Tweets plummet to about 3% of overall tweets. But here, we see that, I mean, the campaign still has late night people working. They're tweeting, but Trump's also tweeting at around 9 o'clock, just a little bit late. Has some tweets that go all the way up to about 11. Then you see here, he's tweeting, and then it picks right back up at 6 in the morning when the morning news comes on, and he's watching it, right? So you can see when Trump's tweeting, and this is how those coffee moments happen. 12:06 a.m., he's tweeting late at night. So what they did from here is they went and they used log ratios to decide what is the probability that in the next tweet these words will come up. And you see a difference between what Trump tweets, badly, crazy, joke, dumb, Brexit, funny. What the campaign tweets, hashtags, make America great again, I'm with you, which was a counter to Hillary's I'm with her. Different events, 7 p.m., promotional stuff. We can actually see what Trump's tweeting. I think he's figured this out by now, so can't do it anymore, but kind of fun. You can see the different discourses of the two campaigns. But then there's so many different platforms on social media. This is a screenshot I took, a presentation, that's why it's so bad, of all the different social media accounts the European Parliament is on. Reddit, Pinterest, Google+, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Flickr, Twitter, Spotify, something called Storify, Facebook, Snapchat, I don't even know. Oh, EP Web News, one they have developed themselves. So this takes a lot of resources to run all of these accounts. And I've talked to a lot of people that work for different NGOs, and they're just like, we don't have the capacity to have the Facebook or the social media presence we want because there's so many different platforms. So because there's so many different platforms, politicians kind of have to pick and choose which ones they want to adopt. So this is some data that I've done continuing on Snapchat. This line is aggregate polling data from Real Clear Politics. So this is basically what the campaigns were polling nationally. And this is Hillary Clinton. So we see she's around 50%. These lines are the dates and length of her Snapchat stories. So these are, what is that, about 50 seconds, 100 seconds here. It's imperfect data because the way Snapchat is collected. But what we can see is that when she's low in the polls, she starts snapping. It's a weak correlation, but it's pretty interesting to look at, is that once her poll numbers go up, she's not worrying about Snapchat anymore. Let's look at Bernie Sanders, who was the underdog. Here are his poll numbers, much lower. He's snapping nearly every day because he has something to gain, whereas Hillary has something to lose. So, just a fun thing. But there's so many different social media platforms. People have, as I said, the media diet is unlike I've ever seen before. So this is some recent data from August by Pew Research. What you see is that the larger bubble is how many percentage of Americans use the site, and then the red bubble is what percent use the site for news. So Facebook dominates as a source for news. Twitter is smaller, but a larger percentage of its users use the site for news. Kind of know that. Snapchat, interestingly, has about 5% of its users use it for news. Reddit, Tumblr, WhatsApp, but there's so many different ones. But what the trend is that every year, more people report getting news from more than one platform. So in 2013, it was 15%, and now 1/4 of Americans get news from at least 2 social media networks. It's quite interesting. So switching gears a little bit, this is, does anyone know what this is? It's Ungdomshussel, from the inside. And what does this have to do with anything? It has to do with the physical design of a space. Its architecture influences how people behave within that space. Contrast Ungdomshussel with what Google gives you for Scandinavian design. Very beautiful. But when you compare these, you're probably going to act differently in this scenario than that scenario. Here's a bar, probably get a beer. Here, you'll probably go next to the fireplace and read a book. So, point being, architecture influences behavior. But also, the way a platform is designed influences user behavior on that site. So, this is a paper I'm literally working on at the moment, but I'm putting out this idea of digital architectures, which I define as the technical back-end protocols that enable user behavior in a virtual space. And I've given it 4 categories. One is the network structure, one is functionality, third is algorithmic filtering, and the fourth is datafication. So to break those down, network structure is how connections between users on social media is established. And you might not think that has much of an effect, but it does. So on Facebook, if you want to become a friend with someone, they have to accept your friend request, right? On Twitter, you can configure the platform that way, but mostly you just follow someone, and they don't have to follow you back. So what? The effect that this has is that people's Facebook networks mirror their offline friend connections, whereas on Twitter, they don't. And studies have shown that there's very little overlap between one's Facebook and Twitter network. These are almost 2 different platforms. So it influences who joins the platform simply whether you have to accept a friend or not. In terms of politics, it's an interesting question of who participates on these platforms. And I'll get in more to that in just a second. So this is functionality, and this is just to give you an idea of what the academic kind of way it looks like. I'm still working on this at the moment. But functionality is all the different features you can use. And no need to read all of this, except for I want to point out that certain platform design features do have effects. So take, for example, hardware. What types of things you can access the device from? On Facebook, you can access it from a tablet, a smartphone, an Apple Watch, or a desktop. But on Snapchat, you can only access it from a mobile device. And that has implications for the type of content that's produced. So I interviewed Marco Rubio, he's a senator from Florida, his digital director, and I was asking, what do you snap about? What are you using Snapchat for? And he says, the unique thing is that you have to do it right there. It has to be done from a phone. You can't filter it. You can't take it back to headquarters and manipulate it. So these types of questions, the graphical user interface, what are the limits on media? You can post a 45-minute video to Facebook, but you can only post a 2-minute video to Instagram. What kind of effect does that have on the content political actors produce? What is the broadcast feed? How much cross-platform integration is supported? Can you post from Facebook to Instagram? No, but you can post from Instagram to Facebook. So that influences what type of content is on the platform. And going back to network structure, what that does is if, there's also some recent Pew data. Instagram and Snapchat, here you have different socioeconomic indicators. So you have male, female, different ages, level of education, and ethnicity. And what you find is that the trends are the exact same for Instagram and Snapchat in terms of who uses the platform. More females, skews younger, education's roughly the same, and ethnicities over whites. Why? Because these have very similar functions and platforms. Instagram introduces stories to stave off competition from Snapchat, and this encourages the exact same demographic of user. So if you're a politician, you can probably get your message across on Instagram without even using Snapchat, and that's not good for Snapchat's market model. Similarly, Twitter and LinkedIn, which have less video content, have the same user demographics. Skews male, people looking for jobs, and higher educated and white. So these are very similar platforms. Yes, that's going to lead them to have similar types of users. All right, so algorithmic filtering. This influences what people see. On Facebook, you have a very heavily filtered newsfeed based on algorithms. On Twitter, it's mostly chronological, but you do have some filtering. On Instagram, you have two different feeds, right? You have the Explore feature. This is filtered by a lot of algorithms. How do things get in your Explore feed? We don't know. Then you also have the homepage, where you open up and you scroll through what your friends post. Very lightly filtered. Snapchat, no algorithms. You have to go and actually click content yourself. And lastly, datafication. How digital traces are collected, combined, and appropriated. Going back to your question. Audience matching. So what is this? I'll go a little bit into this. I don't have too much left. Is that we've heard a lot about micro-targeting and dark ads and dark posts recently with the Russians and everything. How does that work? Political parties have a huge database of everyone who's ever voted for them. They have a list of every voter in America, for example. And they have some data, whether it's a Republican or Democratic Party, has their own data about how those people have voted. They give that to all their candidates running in the campaign, and then every campaign goes out and collects their own data. So this includes knocking on people's doors. When you ask who are you likely to vote for, Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, and you give the answer, they mark that in a database. They'll call you, they'll mark did you answer or not, so they have a lot of data. But then what they do is, in the US, there's very, very few restrictions on what type of data can be packaged and sold. So what they do is they combine party data, candidate data, and then third-party data, such as credit card purchases. They have that. And then what they do is they go back and they take your name and your zip code and they send it to Facebook. And from there, Facebook automatically matches your name and zip code with the person they want to identify. So what they do is they also, this is from the data side, and they also send out polling firms to go and ask people in key battleground states these same questions. Who are you likely to vote for? What do you care about? Rank these issues from gun control to healthcare on 1 to 5. And then what they do is they use social science models to predict what type of person cares about the heroin epidemic, for example. They can essentially say, people who care about heroin and stopping it also tend to like these things at a statistically significant level. So they can take an audience of about 1 million people and say, these are people who are likely to care about heroin. Let's take their names and their zip codes, send them to Facebook. Facebook, if our data is good enough, will give us a match rate of about 70 to 80%. So if you have a match rate of 80% and you send 1 million people, you have an audience of 800 people living in a certain area that you know what they care about, and you can target them with micro-targeted messages. So it's kind of complicated. I don't know how well I did explaining it, but the first step is matching an audience, taking data offline, giving it to Facebook, and seeing how well Facebook can pair the data you give it and identify that with actual users. Then goes to the process of actually targeting. So that's putting ads into people's feed on a pay-to-play basis. So you have to actually invest to put an ad into someone who doesn't follow you's feed. And what's the brilliant part about social media for campaigns is they can get feedback in real time. So they can see what's working and what's not working based on data analytics and then retool their message to be more and more effective until they really nail down the audience they want. So this is what the Russians were doing more or less in the last election. We don't know how effective it is. And what that looks like from an actual perspective, this is from Obama's 2012 race, and it's just a group of data scientists, just coders, sitting in a room called the Cave. That's what they do over the course of the campaign. It's not as glamorous as all of the New York Times coverage makes it out to be, I think. I'll kind of run through this. It's supposed to be kind of extra slides, but getting to this idea of digital architecture, this is the most retweeted citizens in the British 2015 election, and those that issued a call to action. So those who said, go vote, go donate, go do something. When the call for action was actually just written in the text, we marked it as a black bar, but when it used a hashtag, we used a gray bar. And what you see is that the large majority of, first of all, these guys sent 850 tweets in 1 week. And they were not bots because we messaged them and we said, hey, are you a real person? And they said yes. And so what we see, it's interesting that Stardust, Fight for UK, and Dryad were UKIP supporters. Celtic Crab and Labour Ada Scott were Scottish National Party supporters. So the top 5 active users by far were supporters of nationalist parties, and they used the most hashtag commands. They knew what they were doing, because by using a hashtag, you can put your, extend the reach of your message. So this is Twitter, and it goes to show you that highly active users, nationalist parties, technically savvy. Then on Facebook, this is from 18 months of Brexit Facebook comments. So this is all political stories in the media, and these are the official Facebook pages of the campaign. So you have Stronger In, Leave EU, and then Leave EU, which was a more radical UKIP supporting wing. And what you see is that the number of commenters, these dark bars, and then the number of comments they left. And it's a relatively small number of users that makes all the comments. And also, the more radical the ideology of the cause, Leave EU had double the comments of Stronger In, for example. So this shows that the more ideologically biased you are, the more you're likely to comment. But most of this conversation takes place in the media, not in the comment fields of campaigns. So that's it for data. I don't know how well I answered the transatlantic trend, so I wanted to make sure I hit that point. Trend number 1, politicians are experimenting with new social media with varying degrees of success. Data and advertising play a key role in campaigning. Politicians enlist the help of supporters to amplify their message. This is the Bernie Sanders Connect with Bernie tool. News consumption on social media is rising, but also news manipulation, fake news. A small number of highly active users dominate the political conversation online. These users are highly partisan. They tend to support insurgent candidates, not just UKIP and nationalist parties, but most people in here, Danes, would probably align with Bernie Sanders ideologically. He's an insurgent candidate, far left. In both the EU and US, the regulatory battle of major tech companies, Big Four, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, is just beginning. So we'll see how it pans out. Lastly, if you're into podcasts, maybe some of you have heard of it. I run a podcast called Social Media and Politics, where I interview a different expert. Try to do it every week. It doesn't work out that way. But I put some episodes up here that you might be interested in from this lecture. It's got a little bit of Danish focus in there since I'm here. But you can follow it on Twitter or get it on any podcast app by searching through your phone. And very looking forward to your questions, and thanks for your attention.